All right, welcome. Today we are digging into a really fundamental piece of the Node.js puzzle, how it organizes code. We're talking about modules. They are literally the building blocks of every single Node application. So let's just dive right in.
Here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about why we even need modules in the first place. Then we'll get into the two big systems in Node, the original, CommonJS, and the new standard, ES modules. We'll put them head to head, touch on the global scope, and then we'll see exactly where this fits on your Node.js roadmap.
So, first things first, why do we even have modules? Well, as any app gets bigger, it gets more and more complex. Modules are how we fight back against that complexity. It's how we keep our code clean, reusable, and, well, sane.
To really get why modules are so great, you gotta think about what life was like without them. Just imagine you're building a massive application. How on earth would you stop all your functions and variables from just crashing into each other?
The short answer? It was a total mess. The big villain of this story was something called the global scope. See, in the early days of JavaScript, especially in the browser, every piece of code lived in the same shared space. This meant your code could accidentally break someone else's code, leading to these awful bugs called variable collisions. It was chaos. And this is where modules come in and save the day. A module is basically just a file, but it's a file that acts like its own little self-contained world. Everything inside it is private by default. Nothing gets out unless you explicitly say, hey, I want to share this, using an export. And here it is. This is probably the most important thing to remember about Node.js. This whole module thing, it's not optional. It's not something you have to set up. By design, every single JavaScript file in a Node project is automatically its own module with its own private space.
Okay, so if every file is its own little island, how do they talk to each other? How do they share code? Well, that brings us to Node's original system for doing this, CommonJS, or CJS for short. So here are the basics of how CommonJS works. To pull in code from another file, you use a function called require. To make your code available to other files, you add it to a special object called module.exports. Now, it loads files synchronously, which just means Node pauses everything and waits for the file to be ready. And it's pretty smart. It only loads a module once and then keeps it in memory in a cache for any other time you need it. Let's look at a super simple example. Say we have a file, math.js, with an add function. To let other files use it, we just tack it onto the module.exports object. And that's it. Our function is now public.
And here's the other side of that coin. In our main file, app.js, we just call require and point it to our math file. Then we can use a little bit of JavaScript magic called destructuring to pull out just the add function. Pretty clean, right?
I absolutely love this analogy. Think of a module like a DVD player. You don't care about all the complex lasers and circuits spinning around on the inside. You just need the public buttons on the outside. Play, pause, stop. That's exactly what module.exports is. It's the simple, public control panel for all the complicated stuff hidden inside your module. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, where do module, exports, and require even come from? They sort of feel like they're just there. Well, they're not global. Here's the secret sauce. Node actually wraps all of your code in a function like this one before it runs. This is the magic that creates that private scope for each file and gives you access to all these handy module-specific variables. Now, CommonJS was created just for Node.js, but the rest of the JavaScript world eventually caught up and created an official standard way to do modules. And that brings us to ES modules, or ESM. ES modules just feel a bit more modern. Instead of require, you use the import keyword. Instead of module.exports, you just use export. A really big difference is that ESM can load code asynchronously, which is a huge performance win, especially in the browser. And the most important part, this is now the official JavaScript standard everywhere. And just look how clean the syntax is. To make our add function public, we just stick the export keyword right in front of it. That's all there is to it. It's a super clear way to say, hey, this thing is for public use.
The import side is just as elegant. Import from add from /math.js. Now pay attention to two little things here. We're using those curly braces for what's called a named import. And, this is a common gotcha, you have to include the full file extension, .js.
Okay, so since CommonJS has been the default in Node for so long, you actually have to give Node a heads up when you want to use the newer ES modules. You've got two main ways to do this. You can either name your files with a special .mjs extension, or, and this is what you'll see most often, Just add one line, type equals module, to your project's package.json file. All right, we've seen both systems in action. Now let's put them side by side to really lock in the differences. This table lays it all out. You can see the obvious syntax differences, require versus import, module.exports versus export. But the real game changer, the most important difference, is the loading mechanism. CommonJS is dynamic. It figures things out as the code is running. ES modules, on the other hand, are static. They're analyzed before your code even starts. This is huge because it lets tools do smart things like remove unused code, making your final app way smaller and faster. Okay, let's zoom out for a second. We've been talking a lot about how modules protect us from that scary global scope. So what exactly is the global scope in Node.js?
If you've ever written JavaScript for a web browser, you know all about the window object, right? It's that big, global thing that holds utilities like setTimeout and console. Well, Node.js has the exact same concept, but it's just called global. It's the same idea, a place for built-in tools that you can access from anywhere.
But here it is. This is the payoff. This is the whole point. Unlike that old-school browser behavior, when you declare a variable in a Node file, even at the very top level, it does not get tacked onto that global object. It stays locked away, private to that module. This is how Node completely sidesteps the chaos of the global scope.
Whew, okay, we've covered a lot. So let's bring it all together and see why understanding all this module stuff is so critical for any Node developer. This quote just nails it. CommonJS built the Node ecosystem. ES modules are shaping its future. You have to know CommonJS because pretty much the entire history of Node is built on it. But ES modules, that's the direction everything is heading. It's the future.
And this all leads to one last, really important question. It's awesome that we can organize our own code into modules, but the real power of Node is the unbelievable community and the millions of open source modules they've already built. So how do we tap into all that?
Well, that's our next stop on the roadmap, NPM, the Node Package Manager. It's the engine that powers the entire Node ecosystem, letting you find, download, and manage all of those amazing community modules. We'll get into that next time. This is Developer Roadmaps. Map your path, build your career.